The dust settled around Catherine Monroe's worn boots as she stood at the edge of Redemption Creek, staring at the copper ring on her finger. The last thing Thomas had given her before the fever took him. 3 weeks ago, she'd buried her husband. 2 weeks ago, the bank had claimed their homestead. Yesterday, she'd eaten her last piece of hardtack. The ring caught the harsh Wyoming sunlight, and Catherine's stomach twisted with hunger so fierce she could taste copper in her mouth. $5, she whispered to herself, trying to calculate. Maybe 6 if the jeweler's feeling generous. It would buy her a week. Maybe 2 if she was careful. Maybe long enough to find work before she ended up like the hollow-eyed women she'd seen in the brothels of Cheyenne. Before she reached for the subscription bell in the distance, let me ask you something. If you're enjoying this journey into the wild frontier of the heart, would you take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and leave a like? It truly means everything to us and helps us bring you more stories of courage, survival, and unexpected love. Thank you for being here. She was reaching to slip the ring off when a shadow fell across the creek bed. Catherine's hand flew to the small knife at her belt. Instinct from 3 years of frontier living. Easy now. The voice was deep, measured, like distant thunder. Didn't mean to startle you. Catherine looked up and up. The man stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of hard labor rather than soft living. His face was weathered bronze, with lines around his eyes that suggested he squinted at the sun more than he smiled. Those eyes, storm gray and unsettlingly direct, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," she said, hating how her voice trembled. "This is public land." "Never said it wasn't." He tilted his head, studying her with the same careful attention she'd seen men use when evaluating horses. But there was something different in his gaze, something that made her feel seen rather than assessed. "You've been standing here near an hour. Either you're the most patient fisherwoman in Wyoming, or you're working up courage for something you don't want to do." Catherine's fingers tightened around the ring. "That's none of your concern, mister." Garrett, Nathaniel Garrett. He stepped closer, and she noticed the dust on his boots, the calluses on his hands, the Colt 45 worn easy on his hip. "Own the Double G Ranch about 3 miles north. And you'd be the Monroe widow, unless I miss my guess." Heat flooded her cheeks. So the gossip had spread that far. The poor widow whose husband couldn't even stay alive long enough to prove up their claim. "What I am is none of your business, Mr. Garrett." Normally, I'd agree. He crouched down, bringing himself closer to her eye level, and she caught the scent of leather and sage, and something uniquely him. "But when I see a woman eyeing a wedding ring the way a starving man eyes bread, it becomes my business. You planning to sell that? And if I am, then you're desperate." He said it without judgment, simply stating fact. And desperate people make desperate choices. "How long since you ate?" Catherine lifted her chin. "I'm managing fine." "That why your hands are shaking?" He nodded toward her fingers, still clutched around the ring. "That why you got shadows under your eyes, dark enough to pass for bruises? That why your dress, which used to fit proper, I'm guessing, now hangs on you like a flour sack? You have no right. I have every right to speak truth when I see it." Nathaniel stood, seeming to take up all the air around them. "Here's another truth, Mrs. Monroe. That ring might get you through a week, maybe 2. Then what? You plan to sell your boots next? Your knife? How long before you're selling something that can't be bought back? The words hit like a physical blow because they echoed every fear that had kept her awake these last nights. What do you want, Mr. Garrett? To make you an offer. He pulled a leather pouch from his belt, and Catherine heard the clink of coins. Her heart hammered. But first, put that ring back on your finger where it belongs. Gold isn't what we need here. You are. Catherine stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Excuse me? I need a cook. Had one. But he got himself thrown by a horse and broke his arm bad enough he had to go back east to his sister. Got 15 men working my ranch, and not a one of them can make anything fit to eat. Been living on burned beans and worse coffee for 3 weeks now. He held out the pouch. $30 a month, plus room and board. You'll have your own cabin, small, but it's got a good stove and a lock on the door. Work starts at dawn, ends after supper's cleaned up. Sundays you got to yourself. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. $30 was more than Thomas had made in 2 months of breaking his back on their failed homestead. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper. Told you, need a cook. You could get any number of men. Don't want men. Got too many already, and they're driving me half mad with their complaining about the food. He shifted his weight, and something flickered across his face. Something almost vulnerable. Had a woman cooking before. Made the place feel different. Less like a military camp and more like a home. Besides, he added, his voice going softer, seems to me you need this job more than I need another useless ranch hand. I won't be anyone's charity case. Good, because I don't give charity. I'm offering fair pay for fair work. He held the pouch out farther. This is an advance. First month's wages. You can start tomorrow, or you can sell that ring and be hungry again come next week. Your choice. Catherine's throat burned. When was the last time someone had offered her a choice about anything? She took the pouch, her fingers brushing his. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through her. Awareness, pure and startling. I'll work hard, she managed. Earn every penny. Never doubted it. Nathaniel's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but was warmer than the stern mask he'd worn before. Come on, then. Sun's getting high, and I'm guessing you could use a real meal before you start tomorrow. As they walked toward where his horse was ground-tied, Catherine slipped the ring back onto her finger. For the first time in 3 weeks, the weight of it didn't feel like a burden. The Double G Ranch sprawled across a valley so green it hurt to look at after weeks of dust and dead grass. Catherine counted at least a dozen buildings. The main house, bunkhouse, barn, stables, smokehouse, and scattered cabins. Cattle dotted the hills like brown and white paint spots, and the whole place hummed with purposeful activity. You built all this? She asked as Nathaniel helped her down from his horse. His hands spanned her waist easily, and she noticed he was careful to release her the moment her feet touched ground. Took 7 years. Started with nothing but a land claim and a stubborn refusal to fail. He gestured toward a small cabin, set apart from the others, near a grove of cottonwood trees. That'll be yours. Previous cook liked his privacy, so I had it built away from the main house. There's a pump just outside, and the privy's behind those trees. The cabin was tiny, maybe 15 feet square, but it had glass windows and a solid door, and a chimney that promised the stove inside actually worked. It's perfect, Catherine breathed. It's small. It's mine. She caught herself. For now, at least. For as long as you need it. Nathaniel pulled the door open, and she caught the scent of pine and dust and emptiness waiting to be filled. Get yourself settled. I'll send one of the men to bring your things." "I don't have things." "Not anymore." She stepped inside, running her hand along the rough-hewn table, the narrow bed with its corn husk mattress, the beautiful iron stove that dominated one wall. "This is more than I've had in months." When she turned back, Nathaniel was watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. Not pity. She couldn't have borne pity. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, as if he saw in her something familiar. "Everyone's got a story," he said quietly. "You don't have to tell me yours. Just know that on my land, you're safe. Any man lays an unwelcome hand on you, he answers to me. Understood?" Catherine nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good. I'll have Maria, she does laundry and mending, bring you some proper work dresses. Can't have you cooking in that." He nodded toward her threadbare dress, but again, there was no judgment in it. "Supper's at 6. Don't bother tonight. You just rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to start earning your keep." He was gone before she could thank him, his boots thudding against the hard-packed earth. Catherine sank onto the bed, and for the first time since Thomas died, she allowed herself to cry. But they weren't tears of despair anymore. They were something more complicated. Relief and fear and gratitude all tangled together. That night, she thanked heaven for Nathaniel Garrett and whatever impulse had sent him to the creek at exactly the right moment. She thanked heaven for this cabin, this chance, this unexpected mercy in a world that had shown her precious little of it. She had no idea Nathaniel stood outside in the darkness, listening to her soft prayers through the thin walls, feeling something crack open in his chest that he thought was sealed shut forever. Dawn came cold and clear, painting the Wyoming sky in shades of rose and gold. Catherine was already awake. She'd barely slept, too aware of the miracle of a real roof and a real bed and the promise of real work. She dressed in one of the 3 simple calico dresses Maria had brought the evening before, twisted her dark hair into a practical bun, and made her way to the main house. The kitchen was large and surprisingly well equipped, with a massive cast-iron stove, a long work table scarred from use, and shelves lined with staples. Catherine's fingers itched to begin. She'd always loved cooking, finding peace in the alchemy of turning simple ingredients into something nourishing. Thomas had loved her cooking, had always thanked heaven for her biscuits, her stews, her... She pushed the memory away and started a fire in the stove. By the time the men started arriving, she had coffee boiling, bacon sizzling, and 3 dozen biscuits browning perfectly. She'd found eggs in the spring house and scrambled them with wild onions she'd spotted near her cabin. Not fancy, but hot and filling and made with care. Sweet mercy, the first cowboy through the door breathed, stopping so fast the man behind him collided with his back. "Is that real food?" "It's breakfast," Catherine said, ladling scrambled eggs onto a plate. "And if you want it, you'll take off your hat and mind your manners at my table." The man, young, maybe 20, with a sunburned nose and gap-toothed grin, snatched off his hat so fast he nearly threw it across the room. "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, ma'am." The others followed, a stream of ranch hands ranging from barely out of boyhood to grizzled veterans of the range. They filled the long table, and Catherine moved among them, serving, pouring coffee, soaking in their genuine pleasure like sunshine after a storm. Nathaniel came in last, and Catherine's breath caught at the sight of him in full daylight. He was even more imposing than she'd remembered. Taller, broader, with a presence that seemed to command the space around him. But his face was kind as he nodded to her. "Smells good, Mrs. Monroe." "Then sit down and eat before it gets cold, Mr. Garrett." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Pleasure? But he took his place at the head of the table without argument. The meal passed in a blur of compliments, requests for seconds, and the kind of easy male banter that Catherine hadn't heard since Thomas had worked cattle with their neighbors. She found herself smiling, then laughing, when one of the cowboys told a tall tale about a fish he'd caught. "That's a lie, Pete, and you know it," another man called out. "That fish wasn't half that big." "Was too. Ask the boss." All eyes turned to Nathaniel, who was methodically working through this third biscuit with what looked like reverence. "Don't drag me into your fish stories," he said, but there was warmth in his voice. "Mrs. Monroe, these biscuits, my mother used to make them like this. Haven't tasted their equal in 10 years. The compliment shouldn't have made her glow like a girl with her first suitor, but it did. I'm glad they please you, Mr. Garrett." "They please me just fine." His eyes met hers across the table, and the noise of the other men seemed to fade away. "You keep cooking like this, and I'll have to raise your wages just to keep you from getting stolen away by some other ranch." "No one's stealing me anywhere," Catherine said, more sharply than she'd intended. "I honor my commitments." Didn't mean to suggest otherwise, but Nathaniel's expression had shifted into something thoughtful, as if he'd heard the real meaning behind her words. The rest of the day passed in hard work, cleaning up from breakfast, preparing a massive lunch of sandwiches and pickles and the dried apple pie she'd managed to throw together, then starting supper. By the time the sun began its descent, Catherine's back ached and her hands were raw from washing dishes in lye soap. But she felt more alive than she had in months. She was rolling out dough for another batch of biscuits when Nathaniel appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the golden light. "Men are singing your praises," he said. "Pete claims he'd take a bullet for you after that pie. It was just dried apples and sugar." It was hope and care, and that's in shorter supply than you might think. He stepped into the kitchen, and Catherine was suddenly aware of how small the space felt with him in it. "You did good today. Better than good. I told you I'd earn my keep. You've done that and then some." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of horse and leather and sun-warmed skin. "But you're dead on your feet. Supper's cleaned up. Go rest." "I should prepare for tomorrow." "Tomorrow can wait." It wasn't a suggestion. "You're no good to me if you work yourself sick. Go on now." Catherine wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her with a jaw-cracking yawn. Nathaniel's mouth curved into that almost smile. "That's what I thought. Go, rest. That's an order from the boss." She went, too tired to fight, and fell into bed still wearing her dress. But before sleep claimed her, she whispered another prayer of thanks for this work, this place, this unexpected sanctuary. And for Nathaniel Garrett, who seemed to see her as a person rather than a problem to be solved. The days fell into a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. Wake before dawn, start the fires, prepare breakfast for hungry men who treated her cooking like a sacrament. Clean up, prepare lunch, start supper, clean up again. It was exhausting work, but it was honest work, and Catherine found herself settling into it, like a bird returning to a long-abandoned nest. What she didn't expect was how much time she'd spend with Nathaniel. He seemed to find reasons to be in the kitchen, checking supplies, discussing the next day's menu, bringing her fresh eggs or vegetables from the ranch garden. Their conversations started practical, and gradually deepened into something more. "You ever run cattle before you came here?" she asked one afternoon, kneading bread dough while he sat at the table, ostensibly reviewing ledgers. "Worked for other men first. Learned what to do and what not to do." He didn't look up from his papers. "Saved every penny for 5 years before I bought this land. Was just sage and grass then. Built it into what it is now. You must be proud." Proud seems the wrong word. Satisfied, maybe. Like I did what I set out to do. He finally looked up, and his gray eyes caught the light from the window. "What about you? What did you set out to do before things changed?" Catherine's hands stilled in the dough. "I was going to be a teacher. Had 2 years at a women's seminary in Boston before my father lost his money in a bad investment. I met Thomas at a church social. He was heading west to claim land, full of dreams about building something lasting." Her throat tightened. "I thought I'd be building it with him. He was lucky to have you, even if it was shorter than it should have been." "Was he?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "Sometimes I wonder if I failed him. If I'd been stronger, or smarter, or—" "Stop!" Nathaniel's voice cracked like a whip, and she jumped. He was standing now, coming around the table. "Don't you dare blame yourself for getting sick. Don't you dare take that weight on your shoulders." "But if I'd noticed sooner, if I'd gotten the doctor—" "Then you'd probably be dead too, from what I've heard of the fever that went through these parts last month. Some things can't be fixed by wanting them hard enough. Some things just happen, and all we can do is survive them." He was close now, so close she could see the darker ring around his gray irises, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched, as if he was fighting his own demons. "You sound like you've had practice surviving," she whispered. "Had a wife once. Mary. She died bringing our son into the world, and he followed her 3 days later." His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands were white-knuckled on the edge of the table. "That was 8 years ago. I swore I'd never let anyone that close again. Didn't seem worth the risk of that kind of pain." Catherine's heart cracked open. Without thinking, she reached out and covered one of his hands with her flour-dusted fingers. "I'm sorry. I'm so terribly sorry." For a long moment, Nathaniel stared at their joined hands as if he'd never seen such a thing before. Then, very slowly, he turned his palm up and laced his fingers through hers. "We're a pair, aren't we? Both of us broken and trying to pretend we're whole. Maybe we don't have to pretend." "Not with each other." His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand, and the touch sent electricity singing through her veins. "Maybe we don't," he agreed quietly. They stood like that for a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, 3, and then Nathaniel released her hand and stepped back, and the spell broke. "I should let you get back to work," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Men will riot if supper's late." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen, her hand still tingling from his touch. That night, Catherine lay awake, staring at the ceiling beams of her cabin. She told herself it meant nothing. Nathaniel was a kind man offering comfort to an employee. That was all. But her racing heart suggested otherwise. The next morning, she found a basket outside her door. Wildflowers, blue and yellow and white, arranged with surprising care. No note, but she didn't need one to know who'd left them. She carried them inside and put them in a jar of water, then stood looking at them for a long time, feeling something unfold in her chest that she'd thought had died with Thomas. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, terrifying hope. 3 weeks into her employment, Catherine had settled into the Double G as if she'd always been there. The men treated her with a mixture of respect and affection, and even gruff old Carlos, who'd been with Nathaniel from the beginning, had admitted her cornbread was passable. But it was Nathaniel who occupied her thoughts far more than was wise. He'd taken to teaching her things. How to ride the gentle mare he'd assigned for her use, how to read the weather in the clouds, how to shoot the rifle he insisted she keep in her cabin, just in case. His hands were patient when he corrected her grip on the reins, his voice calm when she panicked the first time the mare broke into a trot. "Easy," he'd murmured, one hand steadying her at the small of her back. "You're doing fine. Just trust yourself and trust the horse. I'm going to fall. Then I'll catch you. But you won't fall. You're stronger than you think." And somehow, with his quiet confidence surrounding her, she'd found her balance. By the end of the week, she was riding out to pick wild herbs for cooking, glorying in the freedom of movement after so long on foot. "You're a natural," Nathaniel had told her, watching her dismount with only a slight wobble. "Few more weeks, you'll be racing Pete across the meadow." "I absolutely will not." "No?" His eyes sparkled with rare humor. "What if I bet you a whole dried apple pie that you could beat him? Then I'd say you were trying to bribe me with my own cooking, and that's hardly fair." "Never claimed to fight fair, Mrs. Monroe." The way he said her name, formal, respectful, but with an undercurrent of warmth, made her pulse quicken every time. One evening, as she was cleaning up from supper, he appeared with a package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" "Payment for all the lessons you've been suffering through," he said, looking almost embarrassed. "Figured you'd need them for riding." Inside was a pair of split riding skirts, practical and well-made, along with a new pair of boots that actually fit. "Mr. Garrett, this is too much." "It's practical. Can't have you getting tangled up in regular skirts and breaking your net. That would be bad for morale." But his ears had gone slightly red, and Catherine bit back a smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "Truly. No one's." She trailed off, not sure how to finish. "No one's what?" "No one's thought about what I might need in a very long time." Something fierce and protective flashed across his face. "Then they were fools. You deserve to be thought about, Catherine." It was the first time he'd used her Christian name, and the intimacy of it stole her breath. She looked up and found him closer than she'd realized, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. "Nathaniel," she whispered, testing his name on her tongue. His hand came up, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that made her eyes sting. His thumb traced her cheekbone, feather light. "Tell me to stop," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me this is a mistake, and I'll walk away right now. I'll be the boss, you'll be the cook, and we'll pretend this never happened." Catherine knew she should do exactly that, should protect her heart, maintain the boundaries that kept her safe. But when she looked into Nathaniel's eyes, she saw the same loneliness that haunted her own reflection. "Don't stop," she breathed. He kissed her then, soft and careful, as if she were something precious that might break. His lips were warm and slightly chapped, and the kiss tasted of coffee and promise, and the beginning of something that terrified her. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "I didn't plan this," he said. "Didn't want this. Told myself I was done with wanting. I know, so did I. But here we are." "Here we are," she agreed. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, existing in a bubble where the past couldn't touch them and the future didn't matter. Then boots sounded on the porch, and they sprang apart, just as Pete burst through the door. "Boss, we got trouble down at the South pasture. Looks like someone's been cutting fence." Just like that, the spell broke. Nathaniel's face went hard, all business, and he was out the door before Catherine could say another word. She stood alone in the kitchen, her lips still tingling from his kiss, and wondered what she'd just started. The fence cutting was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, incidents piled up like storm clouds. Cattle scattered, a barn door broken, supplies stolen from the bunkhouse. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to keep Nathaniel and his men constantly on edge. "Someone's trying to spook you off your land," Carlos told Nathaniel one evening over supper. Catherine listened from the kitchen, her hands stilling in the dishwater. "Has to be Blackwood. He's been sniffing around your water rights for years." "Marcus Blackwood doesn't have the guts for direct confrontation," Nathaniel replied. "He'll send his men to do the dirty work while he sits in his fancy ranch house pretending innocence. Then we set a trap, catch them in the act." "And risk someone getting killed? No. I'll go talk to Blackwood myself. Make it clear I'm not running." Catherine dried her hands and stepped into the dining room. "Is that wise? If this Blackwood is as dangerous as you say, I can handle Marcus Blackwood." Nathaniel's voice was flat, final. "Been handling men like him since I was old enough to work." "That doesn't mean you have to handle them alone." His eyes softened when they landed on her. "I appreciate the concern, Catherine, but this is ranch business, my business. Your business that could get you killed. I'll die before I let Blackwood take what I've built." He stood, his meal barely touched. "Carlos, double the night watch. I want 2 men on patrol at all times. Pete, you ride into town tomorrow and file a formal complaint with the sheriff. And Mrs. Monroe." He looked at her, and she saw worry beneath the determination. "I want you to keep that rifle loaded and close. Blackwood's men see a lone woman as an easy target." Fear coiled in her stomach. "You think they'd come after me? I think desperate men do desperate things. And I think I'd rather be overcautious than bury another." He cut himself off, but the unspoken word hung in the air. Woman, another woman he cared about. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a warmth that was almost painful. "I'll be careful," she promised. "See that you are." He grabbed his hat and headed for the door, then paused. "Catherine?" "Yes?" "Lock your cabin door tonight. And every night until this is settled." He left before she could respond, taking all the air in the room with him. That night, Catherine did as instructed, locked her door, loaded the rifle, kept it within arm's reach of her bed. But she couldn't sleep, too aware of the darkness pressing against her windows, too conscious of the vulnerability of being alone. She was dozing fitfully when she heard it. The soft crunch of boots on gravel outside her cabin. Catherine's heart slammed against her ribs. She reached for the rifle, her hands surprisingly steady as she cocked it. The footsteps stopped at her door. "Catherine?" Nathaniel's voice, low and urgent. "It's me. Open up." She scrambled out of bed, fumbling with the lock. When she yanked the door open, Nathaniel stood there in the moonlight, blood seeping through his shirt sleeve. "Oh God, what happened?" "Ran into some of Blackwood's men down by the creek." He swayed slightly, and Catherine grabbed his good arm. "Get inside. Sit down before you fall down." She lit a lamp with shaking hands, then helped him to the chair by her table. In the flickering light, she could see the damage. A deep gash on his upper arm, bleeding freely through the torn fabric of his shirt. "This needs stitches. Just wrap it. I'll be fine. You'll be infected and feverish by morning if I don't close this properly." She was already gathering supplies. The needle and thread she kept for mending, the whiskey she'd been saving, clean cloths. Now take off that shirt. Catherine, Mr. Garrett, I've nursed my husband through everything from broken bones to pneumonia. I'm not squeamish, and I'm not going to let you bleed to death out of some misplaced sense of modesty. Shirt off, now. Something that might have been admiration flickered across his face. He unbuttoned his shirt and shrugged it off, hissing when the movement pulled at his wound. Catherine had seen shirtless men before. It was impossible not to, living on a frontier homestead where men worked in brutal heat. But Nathaniel's chest was a map of survival. Muscles earned through hard labor, scars from old battles, a dusting of dark hair that arrowed down past his belt. She forced herself to focus on the wound, cleaning it with whiskey while he gritted his teeth against the pain. "Go slow," he said tightly. "It hurts." "I know, I'm sorry, but this has to be done right." She threaded the needle, said a quick prayer, and made the first stitch. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound. Catherine worked as quickly as she dared, each stitch careful and precise. His skin was warm under her fingers, and she was intensely aware of his breathing. The way his muscles jumped when the needle pierced flesh. The sheer intimacy of this moment. "What happened?" she asked, partly to distract him, and partly because she needed to know. "Really happened? Caught 3 of them trying to poison the creek. Would have killed half my herd if I hadn't stopped them." His voice was tight with pain. "Got into a fight. One of them had a knife. I had my gun. They ran." "Did you shoot them?" "Shot at them. Missed on purpose. I wanted them scared, not dead. Dead men bring the law, and I'd rather handle this myself." He watched her work, his eyes following the movement of her hands. "You're good at this." Necessity is a harsh teacher. She finished the last stitch and tied it off, then wrapped the wound in clean cloth. "There. But you need to rest. Let this heal. No working for at least 3 days. Can't. Too much to do." "Can't or won't?" She sat back, meeting his eyes. "Nathaniel, you're no good to your ranch if you're dead. And that's exactly what you'll be if this gets infected, or if Blackwood's men come back and you're too weak to defend yourself. Bossy. Practical." She softened her tone. "Please, just take care of yourself. For me." The words hung between them, intimate and revealing. Nathaniel's hand came up, cupping the back of her neck, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin just below her ear. "You're making it very hard to keep my distance," he said roughly. "Maybe I don't want you to keep your distance anymore. Catherine, I know this is complicated. I know we're both broken and scared and probably making a terrible mistake. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel alive again. And I don't want to go back to just existing." For a long moment, he just looked at her, his gray eyes searching hers. Then he pulled her close, careful of his injured arm, and kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath. This kiss was different from the first, hungrier, more urgent, tasting of need and fear, and the recognition of how easily they could lose each other. Catherine's hands came up to cradle his face, and she kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Don't know how to let someone in again." "Then we'll figure it out together," Catherine whispered. "But right now, you need to rest. You can take my bed. I'll sleep in the chair." "Not a chance. This is your cabin. It's your ranch, and you're injured, and I'm not arguing about this." She helped him to his feet, guided him to the narrow bed. "Catherine, for once, just listen to me, please." He subsided, too exhausted and blood loss weak to fight anymore. Catherine pulled the blanket over him, then settled into the chair with the loaded rifle across her lap. "You're something else," Nathaniel murmured, his eyes already closing. "Something special." "Sleep," she told him. "We'll worry about everything else in the morning." She watched him drift off, his features softening in sleep, and felt something shift in her chest. This man, this strong, stubborn, surprising man, had become precious to her in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. And if Marcus Blackwood thought he could take what belonged to Nathaniel, he'd have to go through her first. Morning came gray and threatening, storm clouds building in the west. Nathaniel woke slowly, groaning, as movement pulled at his stitches. Catherine was instantly beside him, checking his forehead for fever. "How do you feel?" "I got in a knife fight and lost." But there was warmth in his eyes as he looked at her. "You stayed awake all night?" Someone had to keep watch. She helped him sit up, noting with relief that there was no sign of infection in his wound. "I'll get you some breakfast, and then you're staying in bed for at least today." "Can't. Need to check on the men. Make sure Carlos can handle the men." "You're staying put." They argued about it over breakfast, eggs and biscuits that Catherine prepared in her small cabin stove. But in the end, Nathaniel's exhaustion won. He agreed to rest for the day, though his expression suggested he wasn't happy about it. "You're worse than a mother hen," he grumbled, but there was no heat in it. "And you're worse than a stubborn mule." She refilled his coffee cup. "But we're not discussing this anymore. Doctor's orders." "You're not a doctor." "No, I've survived worse than Marcus Blackwood. But have you survived it alone?" Catherine reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "You don't have to face everything by yourself anymore. Let me help." "This isn't your fight. It is if it threatens you. It is if it threatens this place that's become my home." Her voice cracked slightly. "It is if it threatens the first good thing I've had since Thomas died." Nathaniel's hand turned, lacing his fingers through hers. "You've become important to me, Catherine. More important than is probably wise. And that means I need to keep you safe, even if it means facing Blackwood alone." "You're not listening. I don't want to be kept safe. I want to stand beside you. I'm tired of being protected and sheltered and treated like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. I survived losing my husband, losing my home, nearly starving. I'm stronger than I look." "I know you are." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "But letting you face danger goes against every instinct I have." "Then trust your other instinct, the one that knows we're better together than apart." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, eyes locked, while the wind outside rose and the first drops of rain began to fall. "Together," Nathaniel finally said. "But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks." "Together," Catherine agreed. The storm broke in earnest that afternoon, wind howling down from the mountains, rain turning the ranch yard into a sea of mud. Catherine moved between the main house kitchen and her cabin, preparing food for men who were soaked and chilled, from emergency repairs to buildings and fences. She was carrying a basket of sandwiches to the bunkhouse when she saw riders approaching through the rain. 4 men, their faces hidden by hat brims and rain slickers. Catherine's hand went to the knife at her belt. Something about these riders felt wrong. "Can I help you?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. The lead rider pushed back his hat, revealing a face that was handsome in a cruel way. Sharp features, cold blue eyes, a mouth that curved in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a threat. Looking for Nathaniel Garrett. Heard he had an accident last night. Marcus Blackwood. Had to be. Mr. Garrett isn't available. You'll have to come back another time. That's so? Blackwood dismounted, and his men followed suit. See, the thing is, I don't like being put off. When I want to talk to someone, I talk to them. So why don't you run along and fetch Garrett for me, sweetheart? Catherine's grip tightened on her basket. I'm not your sweetheart, and Mr. Garrett gave orders that he's not to be disturbed. You can leave a message with me, or you can ride back to wherever you came from. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. You must be the widow he hired. Heard he took in some charity case. Got to say, Garrett always did have a soft spot for broken things. The words hit like a slap, but Catherine refused to flinch. State your business or leave. Those are your options. My business is with Garrett, not some kitchen skirt who doesn't know her place. Blackwood took a step closer, and Catherine smelled whiskey on his breath. But maybe we can come to our own arrangement. I could use a woman with your skills in my house. Pay you double what Garrett does. Not interested. Didn't ask if you were interested, made you an offer. Another step closer. See, sweetheart, when Marcus Blackwood makes an offer, smart people accept it, because the alternative tends to be unpleasant. Back away from her, Blackwood. Nathaniel's voice cracked through the rain like a whip. Catherine turned to see him standing on the porch of her cabin, rain soaking his shirt, his Colt .45 hanging loose in his hand. He looked dangerous, lethal, nothing like the gentle man who'd kissed her last night. There you are, Blackwood turned, all false cheer. Been looking for you, Garrett. We need to talk. Then talk. But you take one more step toward Mrs. Monroe, and we'll be having a different kind of conversation. Blackwood's smile didn't waver, but his hand dropped to his own gun. Mighty protective of your cook. Makes a man wonder what other services she's providing. The gunshot came so fast, Catherine barely saw Nathaniel move. The bullet kicked up mud 6 inches from Blackwood's boot, and the man jumped back with a curse. Next one won't be a warning, Nathaniel said, his voice deadly calm. Mrs. Monroe is under my protection. That means you don't look at her. Don't talk to her. Don't even think about her. Understood? For the first time, Blackwood's composure fine. Just give me a minute. He guided her back to the cabin, kicking the door shut behind them. Once inside, away from the rain and prying eyes, Catherine's composure shattered. She started to cry, great gulping sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. Hey, it's all right. You're safe now. Nathaniel pulled her close, his hand stroking her hair. I've got you. You're safe. He was going to hurt me. I could see it in his eyes. I know, but he didn't, and he won't, because I won't let him anywhere near you again. Catherine buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, grounding herself in his solid warmth. Gradually, her sobs quieted, though she didn't pull away. You shouldn't have come out, she finally said. You're supposed to be resting. And you think I'd stay in bed while that snake threatened you? His arms tightened around her. Catherine, I'd crawl through broken glass to keep you safe. A little injury isn't going to stop me. She pulled back enough to look at him, and what she saw in his eyes made her heart skip. You're bleeding again. The stitches pulled. Worth it. Nathaniel Garrett, you are the most stubborn, reckless. He kissed her, cutting off her scolding, and Catherine forgot why she was angry. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away the last of her tears, and she melted into him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. This is getting complicated, he said. I know. Blackwood saw how I reacted to him threatening you. He's going to use that against us. I know that too, and I still don't care. He pulled back to look at her properly. Catherine Monroe, somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my cook. You became everything. And I'll be damned if I let Marcus Blackwood or anyone else take you from me. Then we fight. Together. Together, he agreed. 2 days later, Nathaniel called a meeting with his men. Catherine sat in the corner of the bunkhouse, ostensibly darning socks, but really listening to every word. Blackwood's not going to stop with intimidation, Nathaniel said, his voice carrying in the crowded space. He wants this land, and he's shown he's willing to play dirty to get it. So here's what we're going to do. We fight, Carlos interrupted. Simple as that. Fighting is exactly what he wants. Gives him an excuse to bring in the law, claim we're the aggressors. Nathaniel shook his head. No, we're going to be smarter. Pete, you ride to every ranch within a day's journey. Tell them what Blackwood's doing. If he's willing to go after me, he'll go after them too eventually. We need allies. What about the sheriff? Another man asked. Bought and paid for by Blackwood. We're on our own. Nathaniel's eyes swept the room. I won't order any of you to stay. This could get ugly, and I'll understand if you want to draw your pay and ride out. Not a single man moved. We're with you, boss, Pete said, and the others murmured agreement. You gave us jobs when no one else would. You treat us fair. We ain't abandoning you now. Catherine felt a swell of emotion, watching Nathaniel receive this loyalty. He cleared his throat, clearly moved. All right then. We double the watch, work in pairs, and no one goes near the property line alone. Mrs. Monroe. He looked at her directly. You stay close to the main house or your cabin, rifle loaded at all times. Understood? Understood. The meeting broke up, men heading to their assigned tasks. Nathaniel caught Catherine's arm as she tried to slip out. Walk with me? They walked toward the creek, the same creek where he'd first found her trying to sell her ring. It felt like a lifetime ago, though it had been less than 2 months. I've been thinking, Nathaniel said, stopping at the water's edge, about what happens after this is over. After? When Blackwood is dealt with, one way or another. When things settle down. He turned to face her, and Catherine's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. I want you to stay, not as my cook, as more than that. Let me finish. I know it's fast. I know we've both got scars that haven't healed. But I also know that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is whether you slept well. I know that your laugh makes me forget every hard thing I've been through. I know that the thought of you leaving tears me apart inside. He took her hands, and Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. I'm not asking for forever right now. I'm just asking you to think about staying, about giving us a real chance. I don't have to think about it, Catherine said, her voice shaking. I've been falling for you since that first day at the creek. Maybe even since you told me gold wasn't what you needed. You saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to everyone else. How could I not fall for you? The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after a long night. Is that a yes? It's a yes to staying. It's a yes to us. It's a yes to everything, Nathaniel. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Catherine felt something settle in her chest. This was right. This was home. They were still standing by the creek, wrapped in each other's arms, when the first gunshot rang out. Nathaniel reacted instantly, pushing Catherine behind him as more shots echoed across the ranch. Men were shouting, running toward the main barn. Fire! Someone yelled. The barn's on fire! Smoke was already billowing from the structure, black and thick. Nathaniel sprinted toward it, and Catherine ran after him, her heart in her throat. The scene was chaos. Men hauling buckets of water, trying to free panicked horses from their stalls, beating at flames that seemed to spring up faster than they could be extinguished. Through the smoke, Catherine saw riders in the distance, watching. Blackwood's men. "They're just going to watch us burn," Carlos spat, coughing through the smoke. "Let them watch us win," Nathaniel said grimly. "Form a line to the creek. We save every animal and every scrap of tack we can." For the next hour, Catherine worked alongside the men, hauling water, leading frightened horses to safety, dragging saddles and bridles from the tack room. Her dress was ruined, her hands blistered, her lungs burning from smoke. But she didn't stop. By the time they got the fire under control, the barn was a partial loss. One end completely destroyed, the other damaged but salvageable. They'd managed to save all the animals and most of the equipment, but the message was clear. Blackwood was escalating. "This is my fault," Nathaniel said that evening, standing in the ruins, his face smudged with soot. "I should have seen this coming. Should have..." "Should have what? Surrendered your land to a bully?" Catherine moved to stand beside him. "This isn't your fault. This is Blackwood's choice, his crime, and we're going to make sure he pays for it. How? We can't prove he did this. Maybe we don't need proof. Maybe we just need to be smarter than he is." Nathaniel looked at her, something like hope dawning in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Marcus Blackwood is a man who likes to feel powerful. And powerful men make mistakes when they feel threatened." An idea was forming, dangerous, but potentially effective. What if we gave him what he thinks he wants? I'm not following. What if we let him think we're giving up? Let him think he's won. And when he comes to collect, we trap him. Nathaniel's eyes widened. "Catherine, that's brilliant and incredibly dangerous." "So is doing nothing while he burns us out." She gripped his arm. "But we'd have to sell it perfectly. Make him believe you're broken." "I'm not a good actor." "Then I'll do the acting." The plan was crystallizing in her mind. "I'll go to him. Tell him you're willing to sell, but you're too proud to do it yourself. Arrange a meeting, and when he shows up to gloat, we'll have witnesses, evidence. Enough to take to the territorial governor, if not the sheriff." Nathaniel pulled her close. "You're taking all the risk in this plan." "We both are, but I trust you to keep me safe. With my life," he promised. The next morning, Catherine rode alone to Blackwood's ranch, her heart hammering, but her face carefully composed in an expression of defeat. The ranch house was grand, far grander than Nathaniel's practical buildings, all imported wood and glass windows that had no business in the Wyoming wilderness. Blackwood himself met her at the door, surprise flickering across his face. "Well, well, the widow Monroe, to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "I need to speak with you." "About Mr. Garrett's land." Interest sharpened in Blackwood's eyes. "Is that so? Come in, come in." The house's interior matched its exterior. Expensive furniture, paintings on the walls, a Persian rug that probably cost more than Catherine had earned in her entire life. Blackwood settled into a leather chair and gestured for her to sit. "Now then, what brings you here?" Catherine took a breath, channeling every ounce of acting ability she possessed. "Mr. Garrett is ready to sell." The fire broke something in him. "He's talking about going east, starting over somewhere less hostile." She let her voice waver. "But he's too proud to come himself. Asked me to negotiate terms." "Did he now?" Blackwood leaned forward. And what makes you think I'd negotiate through a woman? Because I'm the only one he trusts not to shoot you on sight? Catherine met his eyes. And because you're a businessman, you don't care who delivers the message, as long as you get what you want. A slow smile spread across Blackwood's face. Smart and pretty, Garrett's a fool to let you go. He's not letting me go. I'm leaving on my own. I didn't sign up for range wars and burning buildings. She hoped the bitterness in her voice sounded genuine. I just want to collect my wages and move somewhere safer. Understandable. Blackwood stood, moving to a sideboard where he poured 2 glasses of whiskey. So what are Garrett's terms? $20,000. Half now, half when he signs the deed over. 20? Blackwood laughed. That land's not worth half that, even with improvements. It's worth it to you if it means you control the only reliable water source for 50 miles. Catherine accepted the whiskey glass but didn't drink. Mr. Garrett says that's his price. Take it or leave it. Blackwood studied her for a long moment. How do I know this isn't a trap? What kind of trap? You have more men, more money, more influence. Mr. Garrett is one man with a burned barn and a lot of debts. She set the glass down untouched. He's beaten, Mr. Blackwood. He just wants enough to start over somewhere else. And you're absolutely certain he'll sell? I'm certain he sees no other choice. More silence. Then Blackwood nodded slowly. All right. I'll bring the money tomorrow at noon. We'll do the transaction at Garrett's ranch. I want to watch him sign those papers myself. Tomorrow at noon, Catherine agreed, standing. I'll tell him. She was at the door when Blackwood called out. Mrs. Monroe, after this is settled, that offer I made about coming to work for me, it still stands. I could use a woman with your particular talents. Catherine forced herself to smile. I'll think about it. She rode back to the Double G at a controlled pace, though every instinct screamed at her to run. Only when she was safely back on Nathaniel's land did she let herself shake. He was waiting for her at the barn, and the relief on his face when he saw her almost undid her composure. How did it go? He took the bait. He's coming tomorrow at noon with the money. She dismounted, and Nathaniel caught her as her legs buckled. God, Nathaniel, he's vile. The way he looked at me. I know, I'm sorry I sent you there. You didn't send me, I volunteered. She straightened, forcing steel back into her spine. Now we need to make sure we're ready when he arrives. The next 12 hours were spent in careful preparation. Pete rode to gather men from neighboring ranches, witnesses who could testify to whatever happened. Carlos positioned armed men in strategic locations, hidden but ready, and Nathaniel wrote out a careful account of everything Blackwood had done, signing and dating it just in case. If this goes wrong, he started. It won't, Catherine interrupted. But if it does, I need you to promise me something. He took her hands. Promise me you'll run. Don't try to be a hero. Just get on a horse and ride until you're safe. I'm not leaving you. Catherine, no. I told you we're in this together, and I meant it. She cupped his face, feeling the rasp of his morning stubble against her palms. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it side by side. That's not negotiable. He pulled her close, and they stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other. I love you, he said quietly. Didn't plan to, tried not to, but I do. Tears burned Catherine's eyes. I love you too, so much it terrifies me. Then let's make sure we both survive tomorrow so we can be terrified together for a very long time. Noon came, with clear skies and a wind that smelled of sage. Catherine stood beside Nathaniel on the porch of the main house, watching the dust cloud that marked Blackwood's approach. "Remember," Nathaniel murmured, "let him do the talking. The more he says, the more witnesses we have to his crimes." "I know." Blackwood arrived with 6 men, twice as many as Catherine had expected. Her stomach clenched with fear, but she kept her expression neutral. "Garrett," Blackwood called out, all false cheer. "Ready to do business?" "Let's see the money first," Nathaniel replied. Blackwood gestured to one of his men, who carried forward a leather satchel and opened it. Catherine's eyes widened at the stacks of bills inside. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. 10,000, as agreed. "You'll get the other half when I have the signed deed." "Fair enough." Nathaniel pulled out a folded document. "Here's the deed. All legal and proper." Blackwood took it, scanning the contents. Then he smiled, a smile that made Catherine's blood run cold. "You're a terrible liar, Garrett. Always have been." Nathaniel's hand moved toward his gun, but Blackwood's men were faster. 6 revolvers appeared, all pointed at Nathaniel's chest. "See, here's the thing," Blackwood continued conversationally. "I knew this was a trap the moment your pretty cook showed up at my door. No man gives up his land that easy, especially not a stubborn bastard like you. Then why come? Because I wanted to watch your face when you realized you've lost." Blackwood nodded to his men. "Burn it. Burn it all. And this time, make sure nothing survives." "No!" Catherine lunged forward, but Nathaniel caught her, pulling her behind him. "You do this and you'll hang," Nathaniel said, his voice deadly calm. "Will I? Who's going to testify? You'll be dead. Your men will be dead. And anyone who might have seen something will be too scared to talk." Blackwood's smile widened. "By tomorrow, this land will be mine, and no one will care about one more unfortunate accident in the territories." "Wrong." The voice came from the barn. Pete stepped out, and behind him came a dozen men from neighboring ranches, all armed, all watching, all bearing witness. "Heard every word," Pete said cheerfully. "And so did they. You want to try burning us all, Mr. Blackwood?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face. He looked at his 6 men, then at the dozen rifles pointed at them. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Oh, it's over," Nathaniel said. "You just confessed to arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy in front of 15 witnesses. Even a bought sheriff can't ignore that." He pulled Catherine close. "Now get off my land. And if I ever see you near Mrs. Monroe or anyone else on this ranch, I'll kill you myself. That's a promise, not a threat." Blackwood's face went purple with rage, but he was beaten and knew it. He remounted, his men scrambling to follow, and rode off without another word. The moment they were out of sight, Catherine's legs gave out. Nathaniel caught her, lowering them both to the porch steps. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's really over. We did it. We actually did it. You did it. That plan was pure genius." He pulled back to look at her. "You're amazing." They sat like that while the witnesses dispersed, while the men celebrated, while the sun tracked across the sky. And somewhere in that quiet moment, Catherine realized that she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever. A future, a home, a love worth fighting for. 3 months later, Catherine stood in the same spot where Nathaniel had first found her, at the creek, looking at the copper ring on her finger. But this time, she wore a second ring beside it, gold, simple. "Good thing I'm nosy and couldn't leave well enough alone." Catherine laughed, leaning back against his chest. "Good thing you saw something worth saving." "I saw a woman worth knowing. There's a difference." He turned her in his arms, and Catherine's heart still skipped at the look in his eyes. Though I have to admit, I didn't expect to fall in love with you quite so hard. Same. I thought I was done with love, thought that part of my life was over. And now? Now I think it was just beginning. She rose on her toes to kiss him. Thank you. For what? For seeing me, for giving me a chance, for showing me that broken things can heal if they're given time and care and love. Right back at you, Catherine Garrett. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Though I have to say, for a woman who swore she'd just be my cook, you've become a lot more. Is that a complaint? That's gratitude. He rested his forehead against hers. Gratitude that I was at the right place at the right time. That you were brave enough to take a chance on a surly rancher with more scars than charm. That we built something together, you and me, against all odds. Later, as they walked back to the house, their house now, Catherine thanked heaven one more time for the wealthy rancher who'd hired a poor widow and somehow lost his heart to the way she thanked heaven for her blessings. She thanked heaven for second chances and new beginnings and the miracle of love found in the most unexpected places. And she thanked heaven for Nathaniel Garrett, who'd shown her that gold isn't what we need, that sometimes all we need is someone who sees us, truly sees us, and chooses to stay anyway. Together they built something lasting, something real, something worth every risk they'd taken. And that was worth more than all the gold in the world. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Catherine and Nathaniel's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.